Thanks for being here. Good evening. Hi, Lauren. I was a new immigrant, eager to shine, and if self-abuse were to be omitted from the reckoning pure of body and heart. That is the first line of my novel, Immigrant Montana. My narrator, Kailash, comes to America from India and hears Dr. Ruth on the radio offering sex advice. Dr. Ruth was also an immigrant. Her parents perished at Auschwitz. She grew up in an orphanage, but here she was in America talking about orgasms. Kailash thought that Dr. Ruth sounded a little bit like Henry Kissinger. Except that, unlike Kissinger, she wanted you to make love, not war. On the first page of that novel, Kailash says that to all the Americans who welcomed me, I wanted to say, even without being asked, that E.T. ought to have won the Oscar over Gandhi. Because he says Gandhi seemed inauthentic to him, the film, I mean. And he says, and I felt inauthentic myself. I mention Gandhi because I was used to seeing Gandhi in India when I was growing up from the office walls. But the truth about the world, the great world spinning, is that you come to another country and what your reality is appears now in a new light. So I came to America and there was still Gandhi, the half-naked fakir, but now he was a model for Apple. Think different, the poster said. But then one day the planet did indeed spin a bit too much because I came out of West 4th Street and I saw a sign that said, Gandhi was a great and charitable man. And then underneath, in smaller type, it said, but his triceps could do with some help. It was an advertisement for a gym. And if you went for early membership, you would save $150. I think Gandhi would have found that a little bit too steep a packet, but he would have appreciated the thriftiness of the early membership plan. You know what I'm saying? Gandhi had been outside the country, outside India, for 2 decades, more than 2 decades, in fact, in England and South Africa, before he came to India. And in India, he started his Satyagraha revolution, the revolution that drove the British out, in a small, obscure town called Motihari. Motihari is a district town near my own ancestral paternal village. And I'm mentioning Motihari in this place in New York simply because Motihari was also the birthplace of one of my literary heroes, George Orwell. Yeah, that's the response I wanted. Do that again, Lauren. Yeah. George Orwell's father was an opium sub-deputy agent for the British. And the bungalows in which the Orwells had lived is now overrun by stray dogs and pigs. And one of the Indian newspapers described it as an animal farm. All of this, I need not go in greater detail because it's there in my novel, My Beloved Life. And the man in My Beloved Life, Jadoo, is from that town, Motihari, and he teaches history in a provincial college there. He gets a Fulbright fellowship, and he comes to Berkeley. And this is in the 1980s. And a student of his named Joey Turglia shows him a photograph from India, taken from the Kumbh Mela. And the photograph shows a car being pulled by a sadhu, by a naked sadhu, by a chain attached to his penis. And Joey Turglia says to this man, I don't mean to offend you, but is this real? And Jadoo says, yes, but what is real, really? He thinks Joey Turglia was able to get a phone connection without having to pay a bribe, or fill out 20 forms. He thinks Joey Turglia and his friends are able to get electricity for 24 hours every day. They're able to get water all day, all night. Their political representative didn't get his rival killed. Compared to that, what does it matter if a car is being pulled by a priest's penis? You know what I'm saying? Because that is the wonder of it all. In fact, I have a line which I tried to put in red here. This is the wonder of it all. This is how the great world spins. The plain marvel of the fact that we, all of us right now, are here in the same room. My own students haven't posed the question that Joey Turglia has, but I have just finished teaching a course on post-colonial literature, and I wanted to share with you one of the stories, a few lines from one of the stories that I taught in my class. It is Jhumpa Lahiri's The Third and Final Continent. In her story, a young man has come from India to Boston on the day that Apollo 11 mission has put the astronauts on the moon. And I'm very fond of these lines, which I want to share, because I think it speaks to the theme that we are talking about today. While the astronauts, heroes forever, spent mere hours on the moon, I have remained in this new world for nearly 30 years. I know that my achievement is quite ordinary. I'm not the only man to seek his fortune far from home, and certainly I'm not the first. Still, there are times I am bewildered by each mile I have traveled, each meal I have eaten, each person I have known, each room in which I have slept. As ordinary as it all appears, there are times when it is beyond my imagination. You know, when we use a phrase like "let the great world spin," we might make the mistake of thinking we are talking about the movement of a planet. The true meaning of that phrase, really, is that we are talking about the movement of people and of goods and of ideas. And I thought I should discourse on that for a second or two. By the way, the food that you guys are eating smells great. I'll get to it in a second. There must be a machine somewhere where we are told how long we have. You guys ignore it, all right? Because all these, while I was locating the machine, they didn't stop the machine, so listen, so here we are talking about the movement of the planet and the movement of the rotation, the movement of goods. But the reality is that such movement is not always easy. Because while the planet might spin, there's the reality of the intransigent national borders. India and Pakistan were recently fighting a war. It seems to have ended. I'm from India. My wife is from Pakistan. Now it's like 25, maybe 26 years now. But when I was catching a plane to go and meet her parents, the newspaper on the seat said 2 Indian pilots had been shot at the India-Pakistan border. So a new war had started at that time. And to make matters worse, the Cricket World Cup was being played, and India was meeting Pakistan in the semi-final being played at Manchester. As you must have heard, the arc of justice is long, but the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. And India won that match. I used to say at that time to my wife, I'm from India, you're from Pakistan. We are now the citizens of General Electric. That, of course, dates our relationship. If it was now, if we were young and meeting now, I would have had to say we are now the citizens of Amazon or Facebook or, God forbid, Tesla. I've covered love, covered hate. Now my wife and I live in a small town upstate New York where I teach at Vassar College, where you were, and you were wonderful. See, I remember that from that reading. If any of you have read Joseph O'Neill's marvelous novel called Netherland, the name of my town is described as a cry, a happy cry, a merry cry in a child's game, Poughkeepsie. And a British editor asked me to write a short report on a small town. And I thought, what did he want? A parade on Main Avenue, or what was it? And then I thought, why don't I just take it to the question of death? What would happen when I died in Poughkeepsie? You know, where would I be cremated? And that led me to the discovery in our cemetery with the beautiful green rolling hills and many gravestones that there was a crematorium there. And that led me further to the discovery, for the purpose of my article, that the first Indian woman to become a doctor, who had come to this country in 1883, her remains are buried in Poughkeepsie because her patron was this Christian woman in Pennsylvania whose family plot was in Poughkeepsie. And that is where, and I felt I should bring that part up here because that is about the great world spinning. Here is a woman in the year 1883 who becomes a doctor here. 2 years later, or 3 years later, when she goes back, she contracts tuberculosis and dies. Very sad. But then her patron here thinks, no, she should be buried here where she had achieved her dream. And that is why, in my small town, her remains lie. And not only that, there is a crater named after her on Venus. In case, Lauren, you didn't know, all the craters on Venus are named after women. Planetary rotation. And all the craters on Mars are going to be named after Musk. All right. I've cracked a joke. I'm so glad you got your wine there, too. You know, it's like, the moment your wine was delivered to you, I myself found a moment of ease. I've covered death, cremation. I've mentioned cricket. One thing I wanted to tell you was, again, because of the theme of planets and rotation, that the Booker Prize winning book, Orbital, by Samantha Harvey, mentions that the astronauts in space, within a single 24-hour cycle, witness 16 days and 16 nights, which is amazing. Right? Do you have a drink yet? And I just want to place against it the idea that the immigrant always faces a different kind of displacement in time. When it is 7 o'clock here, it is just about to be dawn in Delhi. Yeah, Ashwin? And where it impacts our relationships is that your wife might be sleeping next to you, but you're curious what is happening in the match between India and England in Delhi. And when you put on your phone to check the score at 4 a.m., because it is afternoon at that time, and the match is poised tantalizingly, you hear that sigh of displeasure. That means that your wife has just woken up. And then, because you want to be a good partner, you think, maybe I should get out of the room. But then you make the mistake of dropping your phone or knocking her beloved bed lamp down, and you go out and check. And you think your wife must be thinking that the planetary rotation should go a little bit faster so that the wretched match in Delhi gets over and her stupid husband drops off the planet into the giant nothingness. I want to end, my friends, by saying that I have been celebrating this movement and passage and complications of life, but what of those people who do not go anywhere, who live in some ways tied to their roots? What about them? I mean, aren't they human? You know what I'm saying? I don't want to, in a self-interested way, promote the idea of the migrant as the figure of modernity or wisdom or something. So I thought, what I want to do instead is end by talking about those who, by remaining rooted and somehow content in their smaller world, bring to us a different, powerfully expansive notion of how to be human on a global planet. From your home, you witness the movement of the stars and find your small station in the cosmos where you experience your connection to it. So here is an 88-year-old Hindi poet in an obscure town in central India, writing these few lines that I'll end with, which I have translated from Hindi to English. He says, one should travel across the 7 seas, and when leaving, turn to look back at one's country from another country. From space, look at our earth. Then the memory of what the children would be doing in one's home will be of what children must be doing on earth. The worry about whether there is enough food and water in one's home will be worry about there being enough food and water on earth. Anyone going hungry on earth would be like someone going hungry in one's home. And the return to earth will be like returning to one's home. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience.